Hi guys, welcome back to Mod Studio. So in this episode, we'll be creating a Redwood tree within SpeedTree 10. I'll be showing you the ins and outs on how to create this tree, from creating the materials to finalizing the model at the end for export. The textures that I'll be using, I'll be uploading those to my Patreon page for free, but feel free to become a member there. It would be greatly appreciated. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button down below. So without any further ado, let's dive in. So here in SpeedTree, what I did is, if you want to have this little interface here in a blackish look, all you need to do is just type in the black space over here in the generation, go over to window properties, scroll down where you see background, and normally it's put on ambient light like this, but you can change this to solid color and then you can change it to any color you want. I like working in black so I can see the silhouette of the tree and such. So now the next step is, let's create our trunk. So let's right click in the scene, add geo to trunk. Once your trunk is in the scene, let's go and add height to it. So let's go over to the spine tab. In the absolute value, let's put this to something like 125, very tall tree. Okay, so now let's go over to the skin tab and let's amend the blue curve, the absolute blue curve, to suit our needs here. So you get a shape that you like, and let's increase this to 2.5. So it's a very, very thick tree. So now before we go on, let's create our bark texture that we'll be using. So hit the plus and minus icon at the top and let's say bark. I've already created that. So once it's created, let's click here and you'll find these textures on the Patreon page. So let's select the base color there. Let's select the normal and let's select the roughness, but we'll invert that. Then let's add the AO. These textures were made using AI. If you want to see a tutorial about that, please leave a comment down below and I'll make that one happen. So after, if you've created this, let's add this to our trunk. Let's replace the bark material and let's go into the trunk itself and let's go over to the UV tab and let's enable fractional so we can decrease and increase the size. This will do, and let's give this just a slight twist to it. So now before we go on, let's go over to the render view and let's go over to scribed and let's amend this. So I normally work in quads, so how you can change this is click on the tree here and where it says geometry branches, let's put this to quads as well as the leaves. So in the trunk, go over to segments. And in the segments tab here, let's go to the absolute value here in the radial and let's set it to 32 and let's set the relative length to 2 to have some more quads going on there, because this will help for the displacement of the trunk and such. Let's go over to the render view and put it back to standard. So now we have our tall tree there. Now let's add our first set of branches. So right click in your scene and let's locate the branches and big branches. Okay, so now let's zoom out here, just get the entire model in view. Okay, so in the generation tab, let's set this to the value, the count value to 3. Let's give it some spiral. And in the spine tab, let's take the random value out, max this out. Okay, and now let's amend this, further refine this at the end. So in the generation tab, let's go over to the boundaries and let's increase the first and last boundaries here to something like 45, but this depends on the model you want to create. Some of the redwoods have lower branches, some of them have higher branches and such. So let's create one where it's mid, and the last boundary, let's set this to 0.999. Okay, so now in the spine tab, let's set this to a value of 3 and let's add another point here in the parent green curve here, and let's decrease the bottom ones and amend this so we have something like this. So in the skin tab, let's select the blue curve here. Let's take this one a bit down, add another point there just to give it some sort of thickness at the end. All right, and let's zoom in here, let's quickly see, and the same principle applies here as well. Let's go over to render view, go over to scribe, and in the segments tab, let's amend our length value here to something like 1.2, and let's decrease this radial length, something like this. And in the skin tab, in the spread value, let's increase the lower scale and a bit more at the upper scale, and the amount, let's increase that as well, and let's increase this a little bit more so it's not that thin. All right, so now let's go over to the standard view again, and in the UV segment here, let's select the fractional value again, increase this so it matches the bark as well. Okay, so now let's go over to the generation tab and let's increase this value to something like 6. This little value I love using, so let's go over to the big branches here, and in the knockout, let's increase this so it gives us a bit of a random value there, so it's not that uniform looking tree. So let's enable the extend parent to any as well, so there's one at the top, and in the spine tab let's refine this value here again as well. Preset, let's take this to max, bring down the top ones there. We have something that you like. Okay, and in the skin tab, as you can see, I don't want these lower ones to be as thick as they are. So in the radius here of the green curve, let's select tree and let's just move this out of the way, and let's decrease the bottom ones so they're not that thick anymore. Let's amend the blue curve just a little bit so they're just a little bit thicker. It looks more or less like a redwood tree. So let's add our third set of branches. So how we go about doing this is, let's select our tree here, right click in our scene, go to geo, and let's add another set of big branches. Okay, so in the generation tab, let's click on that and change the interval mode to beautification so it works off the noise pattern of the previous branches, and let's align those so they suit here, something like that. And in the extend parent to any, let's set this to any as well. And now in the spine tab, let's increase this, let's take away the random value and let's max this out. Okay, and now let's select one of these branches, press F on the keyboard so we can focus on this one. Furthermore, let's refine this shape here while we're here, and let's decrease the endpoint just a little bit. Okay, and now let's select these and go over to the generation tab and set the first boundary to, let's say 1. Give this some knockout value, and over to the spine, let's select this and decrease the amount like this, something like 4.8. Okay, and now in the green curve here, let's tell SpeedTree to narrow the ends. Back to the generation tab, let's give this a random value, like some of them are down, some of them are up. In the spine tab, let's give this some gravity, just a little bit of gravity. And in the green curve here, let's select the trunk, let's take this down, same goes for the big, and the tree, the total tree as well. Okay, so now while we're in focus mode, let's create another set of branches. But before we do that, let's go over to the skin tab and let's just decrease this value here. Okay, once again, we'll do the same step, go over to scribe mode, go over to this one, and let's optimize this a little bit more. Go over to the segments and let's decrease the radial amount, because you have to take in mind we'll not be seeing these branches that close, so the more you can optimize, the better it will be. So I think 3 will work great in this instance. So let's go back over to the standard view, let's zoom out and go over to the UV tab here and set this to fractional as well. Let's amend this so the UVs are a bit more uniform. Okay, so now the next step is let's create the third set of branches. So right click in your scene and let's go over to branches, big branches. Let's set this to purification because I want these to work off the noise value there, and I want to align these as well, something like this. And let's give it some random value as well. And as you know, let's go to extend parent and set this to any. And let's go over to the spine tab. For now, let's just take away the random value. Let's max this out. Let's decrease the endpoints, increase the front points there. And in the starting angle, let's take this to 0.5 and let's narrow them again. The same principle, same step as before. Let's give it some gravity. 0.5 I think would work. And again, let's amend this for the entire tree. Speed through this. So now, before we go any further, let's create our pine needles. So let's just call this needles and press OK. And again, you guys have this texture on Patreon. Let's select the pine needles. This texture I've created within SpeedTree. If you want to see a tutorial on how to create leaf maps, please let me know in the comments and I will make that one happen. Let's select this one. and it will automatically load the other textures as required. While we're here, let's enable two-sided material. And let's go over to the cutouts and let's create a new mesh here. Again, let's make sure this is very optimized. So let's select the best you can do here. I'll just quickly speed through this. And let's apply these for all of them. It's just 1 point there, 1 point there. Okay, so now we'll be using the front system for this, as I find that would work a bit easier here. Now let's select these branches, and now we'll add our second set of leaves that will be only using splines to attach our fronds to. So let's select these. Let's go over to the little branches and let's set this to interval, and let's set this to 2. And again, the same principle, let's set this to any. Before we continue any further, let's go over to the scribe mode again, and let's optimize this. Let's set this to 0.5. Okay, that will work. Let's increase the value here. Let's take this back to standard view, and let's increase this value 30 for now. You guys can increase this as much as you want. The viewport will be a bit slower in SpeedTree, but the model itself would be very optimized for in your DC application of choice. So let's go over to spine, and now let's increase the spine length. Let's change this to absolute value. Let's zero all these out, put this to max, and let's put this to something like 1.65. So there's something fuzzy going on like this. So now let's change these to only be spline so we can attach our fronts to them. So let's go over to the skin tab where it says skin type polygons. Let's set this spline only. So now they don't exist anymore. But now let's add our fronts. Right click here and let's add our fronts. Okay, so now what we'll be doing is let's go over to our materials. Let's add our needles to the fronts. Furthermore, now we can refine this. So let's quickly hide these and refine these shapes that we have got going here. So let's select these and let's make them a bit more aligned and re-enable our fronts. Give them some spread value. Let's go over to the fronts. In the geometry, let's give it some raw value. We have something like this going on. Okay, so now let's zoom out a little bit. Let's show everything here. So this would take some time to cook now because there are quite a lot of fronts cooking there. As you can see, we can still optimize in these branches. So quickly let's select this one. We save on the keyboard. Okay, so now here comes the refining part to refine the model to look how we want it to look. Okay, so now let's deselect these ones, H on the keyboard, and let's select these ones and make sure they are quite aligned. Decrease the random value here. All right, and the same goes for these ones. And now let's bring back the little branches here, take away spiral. Okay, and let's go into the spine tab here and let's give it some gravity. So, and let's go over to the random value and let's give this some random values as well, some going up, some going down. And again, favorite little feature, let's go over to the knockout amount. Let's give it some knockout. Okay, so let's unhide the fronts. Let's go back to the second set of branches here and let's increase something like this. Now let's go over to the little branches or the invisible splines and let's increase the spline to something like 0.8. In the little branches here, let's give it random values. So some of them are longer and some of them are shorter because we're not using batch sleeves, so we have to do these with the little branches that are in spline mode only because this will control the size of the fronts. So let's bring back the rest of our tree yet again. Let's give it some time to cook. Okay, so now let's zoom out. So now we are getting our redwood tree that we're going for. So now let's add our root details and we'll add some little twigs coming off here as well. Furthermore, if you want to create a seasoned version of this, I have a full tutorial on that, but in a nutshell is that if you want to do something like that, you have to create a few of these needles with different color variations. For instance, if I duplicate this and you go into this one and you, for instance, make this more red and you create let me just quickly disable these, and if you duplicate this one again and you make this one a bit more brighter and a bit more saturated. So now let's go over to material material set, and let's create a material set and call this pine. And now you'll add your different versions here. Let's add a few of them, give it some time. Turn needles 1, needles 2, and needles 3, and then you'll assign the different seasons here. Like this one would be spring, this one would be summer, and this one would be, sorry, this one would be autumn, and this one would be summer. And then you would apply this material to your fronts here. Let's go over to the material and then just select that one. If we go into the front here and we bring that back, and if you go into the seasons now and you go to summer, it would start changing, bringing in the bits of autumn there. If you go to autumn, we would have autumn, but if you want a full tutorial on how to create seasons for your tree, please check out the seasons tutorial on my YouTube page. Okay, so now furthermore, let's go ahead and optimize this a bit more, because the branches, I think it's these set of branches here. Yeah. So let's quickly hide these. Let's go over to these ones. Let's focus on this one and let's select these and go over to the skin tab and let's disable welding, because we won't be seeing that much. So let's go over to the segments tab and let's decrease this to about a value of 3 and these ones back to 1 to 5. So now let's bring back our entire tree here. Visibility show all. Okay, let's deselect this quickly. Okay, so let's select these needles and let's just apply them back to these fronts, because I like them to be a bit darker. Again, let's give it some time to cook, so on. Okay, so now for this sake, let's hide everything here at the top, so it's a bit faster to work with. Okay, so let's create our root system at the bottom. Right click your scene, let's go to decorations and roots. Same principle applies here. Let's go zoom in, render, scribed view, and let's select our roots and go over to the skin tab and let's scroll down to where we see squish amount. Let's give it some squish amount, and in the skin tab let's increase the size, and in the angle value, let's angle it at a value of 0.8, and in the generation tab scroll down where you see position and let's position this finally down to the bottom. Put this to 0.5 till it just starts to disappear like that. Okay, so now let's select our roots here as well, go into the segments tab and let's increase the radial amount. Okay, and the same thing again, go over to the skin tab, scroll down where you see squish amount and let's give it some squish amount. Go back to the roots. In the spine tab, let's disable the random value. Let's max this out. Let's decrease this amount, and in the generation tab, let's increase the radial count value, and in the position, let's give it some value, and in the skin tab, let's give it some thickness values. Let's select our roots, go over to the segments, and let's increase the length segment, and the same goes for the rooted twigs. And now let's disable that amount, and now let's zoom in again and let's select these, go over to the UV, let's enable fractional so they match the size of the trunk. Same goes for the rooted twigs. So now let's create the smaller scattered twigs that pop up here. So what we can do is, to save some time, let's select the big branches again, Control C, Control V. Let's paste these here, and now let's go over to the generation tab and let's move this to the bottom and decrease the top value here so they only appear in this area. And let's decrease this amount to 1 and a value of 2. No, let's leave that at 3, and go over to the skin tab and decrease this amount in relation with our person there, as you can see. And now let's go over to the spine tab, let's decrease this amount and go over to the starting angle. Let's angle these ones upwards and give them some more gravity. Okay, and now what we'll do is let's select all that, Control C, Control V, and link that to those branches over there, and let's re-enable them, H on the keyboard. Okay, so now let's decrease some of these values, select these ones, and let's reduce this like so, and let's bring back these ones, and let's decrease those ones and bring back our fronts. And now let's bring back the top fronts as well, H on the keyboard. And let's furthermore go over to the trunk and let's give this a bit more detail. Let's go to the scribe mode. In the segments tab here, let's just make sure we have enough. Okay, and in the displacement, let's use the material. So if you go back to our material here, you would see in the bark we have our height material here. So if we increase this, let's select this, let's increase this value, And let's give this some more finer noise to this. Just a little bit noise. We don't want to overwhelm this. And put this back to standard. And now let's go back to the skin tab and let's increase this amount to 2.8. Let's give the fonts some time to compute. Take it back to 2.5 again. Let's go back to the displacement amount and let's take this back to, let's take it into the minus. That works better. Let's take it in the minus. And so yeah guys, that is it for this tutorial on how to create a redwood tree within SpeedTree 10. Feel free to hit that like and subscribe button down below, and I'll keep you posted on new content coming soon. Be sure to visit our Patreon page, would be greatly appreciated, and stay safe and take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.